highlight, all the background stuff that we're doing and all the silly stuff, that you never get to see. So that's exciting. We also went to an
Did you know that reality star Brandi Passante used to get beat up by her four brothers when she was just a kid? That didn't stop her from becoming one of the most popular stars of her generation. However, her childhood trauma, as well as the pressures of fame, all contributed to her shocking fall years later. Keep watching this video to find out the true and sad story of Brandi Passante. Early life, rough childhood, lone girl among brothers. Brandi Lee Passante was born on May 16, 1980 in Harris County, Texas. Right from the start, her world was not the easiest one to grow up in. She was the only girl in a house filled with four brothers, which meant she was always outnumbered. Being the youngest girl with no sisters around gave her a unique place in her family. On one hand, she was noticed, but on the other hand, she often felt left out. And to make things even harder, those brothers were not always protective or gentle with her. In fact, she has admitted that they would often beat her. For many kids, that kind of treatment would leave lasting scars. For Brandi, it toughened her, but it also left her questioning her place in her own family. Imagine being a young girl surrounded by older boys who tease you, push you around, and sometimes get physical. That was Brandi's reality. She wasn't the type of kid who could lean on her siblings for comfort or support. Instead, she had to figure out ways to survive in a rough environment. And as much as that built her resilience later in life, it also left her with deep feelings of being an outsider. She once admitted that she often wondered if she had been adopted because she simply felt so different from everyone else in her household. Those aren't thoughts kids usually have unless something feels very off. Growing up with those feelings of not belonging shaped Brandi in ways most people could never see when they watched her years later on television. On screen, she was fiery, outspoken, and sharp. But under that bold personality was a young woman who had been trained since childhood to protect herself, to hide her feelings, and to act tougher than she might have really felt inside. Being in a house where you can't fully relax teaches you to wear a mask early. And Brandi wore hers well. Her childhood also wasn't one of privilege. She did not grow up with the kinds of luxuries or opportunities that kids from wealthier families often enjoy. No private schools and no endless activities funded by parents with big bank accounts. She went to local schools in Texas, and for a while she also spent time in California. That mix of Texas and California culture exposed her to different ways of life, but at the end of the day she was still just a working-class kid. Her family didn't have money to spoil her, so she learned how to make the best of what she had. That kind of upbringing makes you resourceful, and Brandi carried that lesson with her as she built her career years later. School itself was not an escape for her either. She wasn't the kind of kid who blended in easily, but she stood out because of her personality. She could be blunt, she could be outspoken, and she didn't take nonsense from people. That wasn't just her natural personality, though. It was also a shield she had developed from being the only girl among tough brothers at home. If you grow up in a house where you are constantly tested, you either learn to fight back or you get swallowed up. Brandi learned to fight back, but at the same time, she carried a quiet sense of loneliness. She didn't always feel fully accepted by her family. That can create a strange push and pull inside a child. On one hand, you crave love and connection. On the other hand, you train yourself not to need it because you expect it won't be given to you. That may explain why Brandi often appeared so independent even at a young age. She was used to handling things on her own. Still, those tough years were preparing her for the future in ways she couldn't have imagined. Later in life, when she was standing in front of cameras, bidding on storage lockers, people saw a woman who was confident, direct, and sharp with her words. They didn't realize that the reason she could stare down competitors without flinching was because she had already been battling for respect her entire childhood. Another layer to Brandi's early years was the sense that she was meant for something different. She once said that she often felt out of place, as if she didn't quite fit with the rest of her family. That kind of feeling can be painful when you're young. You start asking yourself questions like, "Why don't I connect with them?" Or, "Is there something wrong with me?" But sometimes that same feeling fuels a desire to chase a different path. For Brandi, it created a drive to carve out her own identity. She didn't want to be defined only as someone's sister or someone's daughter. She wanted to be her own person. That drive started showing in little ways during her school years. She wasn't the kind of girl who sat quietly in the corner. She was outspoken and willing to stand up for herself, even if it got her into trouble sometimes. Teachers noticed her energy, and classmates often saw her as strong-willed. But again, what people didn't see was that her strength was born from necessity. Life in Texas during the 80s and 90s also shaped her. The culture there valued toughness, independence, and family loyalty. Brandi absorbed those values even though her own family life was complicated. She learned the importance of standing on your own 2 feet. She learned that nothing in life would be handed to her, and she carried those lessons into adulthood. When her family later moved to California, she had to adapt again. Moving as a teenager is not easy. You leave behind familiar places, friends, and routines. You start fresh in a new environment where you have to prove yourself all over again. For Brandi, that only reinforced her ability to adapt. She knew how to walk into new rooms, read people quickly, and find her place. Those skills would prove priceless years later when she had to outwit rivals at storage auctions. It's easy to look at Brandi's early life and just say it was rough. But it was more than that. It was a training ground. She was being hardened without even realizing it. She learned to take punches, both literal and emotional. She learned to trust her instincts. She learned to keep going even when she felt different or unwanted. And while that kind of childhood left her with scars, it also gave her tools that would make her stand out as an adult. Meeting Jared, starting a family, opening the shop. Brandi's life took a real turn in 1999 when she crossed paths with Jared Schultz. At the time, neither of them looked anything like the TV personalities people would later recognize. They were just 2 young adults working regular jobs at a carpet cleaning company, trying to figure out life. Jared was persistent. Brandi was tough to impress, and she admits he basically wore her down until she agreed to give him a chance. Their relationship wasn't an instant fairy tale, but slowly they grew into a real partnership. As they got serious, they also became parents. Their daughter Peyton came first, and her arrival brought immediate challenges. She was born deaf and with a soft palate issue that required surgery when she was barely 6 weeks old. That's the kind of situation that shakes new parents to their core. Brandi's daughter's condition meant sleepless nights, hospital visits, and constant worry. Luckily, the surgery restored Peyton's hearing, though she struggled with speech delays as she grew up. Then came Cameron, their son, and with him, another set of medical hurdles. He was born with a kidney mass and a urological issue that kept him in and out of hospitals. For Brandi, it felt like parenting was less about picture-perfect family moments and more about fighting one battle after another just to keep her kids healthy. Through all that, Brandi and Jared were also figuring out how to earn a living. They didn't have big career plans laid out, so they decided to create their own opportunities. That led them to open a thrift store called Now and Then. It was their first real business venture, and it gave them a taste of what it meant to work for themselves. Around the same time, Jared's aunt introduced them to the strange world of storage locker auctions. At first, it was just a side hustle, show up, bid on abandoned storage units, and hope whatever was inside was worth more than the price they paid. Sometimes they'd find hidden treasures. Other times, they'd end up hauling away junk. But for Brandi and Jared, it was exciting. It tapped into their hustle mentality and gave them another way to support their family. That little hustle changed everything in 2010 when they were cast on a brand new reality series called Storage Wars. The premise was simple. Buyers would bid on lockers without knowing exactly what was inside. Viewers got to watch the drama, the wins, the losses, and all the personalities clashing in between. Brandi quickly stood out. She wasn't just Jared's partner. She had an eye for detail and could spot value in things other people overlooked. She had knowledge about antiques, collectibles, and everyday items that most would dismiss. And she wasn't afraid to speak her mind, which was for great TV. For the first time, Brandi and Jared weren't just hustling behind the scenes. They were in front of millions of viewers, and their little storage-buying world had suddenly turned into national entertainment. The show gave them fame, it gave them a new level of income, and it gave them a chance to grow their business beyond what they could have done on their own. But fame, as Brandi quickly learned, comes with a price. Being on camera isn't just about showing your best moments. It also means your personal struggles, your arguments, and even your children's issues can spill into public view. Brandi admitted that fame wasn't all fun and money. She started receiving disturbing letters from strangers. Some of them were threatening, and it shook her sense of safety. Eventually, she moved her family into a gated community for protection. Even then, the anxiety stayed with her. She began therapy to cope, and at one point, she said she even felt nervous just leaving her house. What started as an exciting TV opportunity slowly became a source of stress and pressure. Still, at the height of their popularity, producers decided to give Brandi and Jared their own spin-off. In 2014, Brandi and Jared, Married to the Job, premiered, focusing less on auctions and more on their personal life, which included juggling kids, running businesses, and trying to balance everything under the spotlight. But the show never really found its footing. It struggled with ratings and was canceled after just a handful of episodes. The failure of the spin-off was another reminder of how unpredictable the entertainment world can be. One moment, you're the breakout star of a hit series, and the next moment, your big solo project gets pulled before it even starts to gain traction. For Brandi, though, every good and bad thing that came with Storage Wars became part of her identity. She wasn't just a mom from Texas anymore. She was a household name, someone recognized in grocery stores, airports, and restaurants. She had fans who admired her toughness and critics who dissected her every move. That level of attention is a lot for anyone, but especially for someone who had already spent much of her life feeling like an outsider in her own family. Now, suddenly, the whole world was watching her. And that spotlight didn't just affect her career, it seeped into her personal life with Jared. Being in a relationship is hard enough without cameras following you around. Add in the stress of raising kids with health issues, running businesses, and constantly being judged by viewers, and it's no wonder cracks began to show. Their chemistry, which once made them fan favorites, started to look more like tension as the seasons went on. The cost of fame: personal, legal, and medical struggles. Brandi Passante's life after the rise of Storage Wars looked, from the outside, like a reality TV success story. Fame, money, recognition. She seemed to have it all. But when the cameras stopped rolling, things weren't nearly as glamorous. Her journey in the years after the show was marked not just by wins and notoriety, but by medical battles, personal heartbreak, legal troubles, and a lot of pain that never made it to air. Her children were always her biggest concern, and from the very beginning they faced challenges that most parents only read about. Since her first child was born with a major health issue, it meant that Brandi, as a mother, had to juggle not just the usual school and play dates, but specialists, therapy sessions, and the constant worry about whether her daughter would be able to thrive. As I mentioned before, Cameron, her son, had medical struggles of his own. He was born with a kidney mass and a serious urological issue, which meant hospital visits were a normal part of life for him too. For long stretches, he couldn't even attend school regularly. He missed months at a time because of treatments and recovery. Imagine trying to run a household, maintain a career in the spotlight, and still spend days and nights in hospitals making sure your kids are okay. That was Brandi's reality, and it wore her down in ways none of us could ever imagine. But it didn't stop there, because on top of caring for her children, she was fighting her own medical battles. Brandi was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, an autoimmune condition that attacks the thyroid. Sadly, her sickness was not just a random inconvenience. Hashimoto's can affect everything from energy levels to metabolism to even the sound of your voice. And for Brandi, who had already become known to millions for her sharp tongue and lively personality on TV, losing control of her own voice was especially painful. She later admitted that it made her self-conscious because it changed how she came across to other people. Add in fatigue and other symptoms, and suddenly even basic daily life became harder to manage. Then came the losses that had nothing to do with doctors. In 2020, while the whole world was reeling from the pandemic, Brandi's father died after a long illness. For someone who had already grown up feeling out of place in her family, losing a parent brought another wave of complicated grief. And just as she was mourning, she caught COVID-19 herself early in the pandemic. At a time when so little was known and fear was everywhere, being sick was both frightening and isolating. Her personal life with Jared also unraveled. Fans had long suspected cracks in their relationship, but the breakup became undeniable during the premiere of Storage Wars in 2021, when it was made clear to viewers that they had split. What had once been TV's fiery couple was now broken apart for good. Brandi ended up with full custody of their children, and Jared moved on. For Brandi, it meant rebuilding not only her career, but also her identity as a single mom, something she admitted was both empowering and exhausting. But the breakup didn't come without scars. In April 2021, just as the world was adjusting to post-lockdown life, reports surfaced of a domestic violence incident involving Brandi and Jared. According to police records, Jared allegedly shoved her at a bar after she asked him to leave. Jared denied it, but authorities filed a misdemeanor charge of battery against him. For Brandi, the situation was not only painful, but humiliating, as something private was now made brutally public and dissected by strangers online. It highlighted just how much of her personal life had become entangled with her TV persona, whether she wanted it or not. And the exposure didn't stop there. Even her kids weren't spared the dark side of fame. As her popularity grew, Brandi began to notice creepy and inappropriate messages directed at her children online. Strangers harassed them, commented on their photos, and crossed lines no parent should have to deal with. That was the breaking point for her. She decided to stop posting pictures of her kids altogether, choosing their safety and privacy over the approval of fans. She also moved her family into a more secure gated community to shield them as best she could from unwanted attention. All of this forced Brandi to reflect on what reality TV had really given her. Yes, it brought money, recognition, and opportunities she wouldn't have had otherwise. But it also opened the door to constant anxiety, legal issues, medical battles, and a relationship that ended not just in heartbreak, but in public scandal. For every auction win the world got to see, there were nights of worry and tears that nobody outside her circle ever witnessed. When people talk about the cost of fame, Brandi is a textbook example. She became a star on Storage Wars, but she also became trapped in that identity. Being the fiery bidder with the sharp one-liners may have made great television, but it didn't protect her from autoimmune disease, from losing her father, from raising 2 kids with medical struggles, or from a relationship that went sour. Fame can give you a platform, but it doesn't make you immune to pain. Looking back, it's hard not to feel like Brandi lost more than she gained. The applause and the TV paychecks may have brightened certain years, but the deeper cost was constant stress and public scrutiny she never asked for. Even when the spin-off with Jared came and went, even when the main show brought her national attention, the real story of her life was much heavier. Today, when Brandi speaks out, she does it not to brag about wins or fame, but to show survival. She talks about pushing through anxiety, about going to therapy, about protecting her kids from the ugliness that fame brought into their lives. She's not trying to present herself as untouchable anymore. She's showing the scars and saying, "This is the truth." Her journey makes it clear that the public only saw a small part of the picture. The locker room banter, the bidding wars, the tough girl comebacks. That was the Brandi made for TV. Sadly, the real Brandi was dealing with doctors, lawyers, loss, fear, and the constant pressure of holding everything together for her kids. What the world sees now isn't triumph, it's endurance and survival. The ability to stand back up after everything that's happened, even when the glamour has faded away. And maybe that's the most human part of her story, that behind the fame, behind the notoriety, Brandi Passante is not defined by auctions or TV cameras anymore. She's defined by how much she's endured and how fiercely she continues to protect her family. What her business and public image look like in 2025, what's she up to? Fast forward to 2025, and Brandi Passante is 45 years old. It's kind of wild to think about because a lot of people still picture her the way she looked back in the early Storage Wars days. Back then, she was snapping at Jared at an auction, arms crossed, hair perfectly in place, and eyes sharp on some random box of junk that she knew had hidden value. Time moves fast, though, and while Brandi is still in the game, her life looks a lot different than it did when she first showed up on TV more than a decade ago. She's still on Storage Wars, which is a bit surprising, given how many reality shows burn out after a season or two. But the format has been stretched. The newer seasons have longer episodes, with more time spent following the drama outside of the storage units. Fans tune in not just for the chance of a treasure being pulled out of a dusty locker, but also to catch up on how the cast is navigating their personal lives after all these years. Brandi has become one of the steady, reliable faces of the show. She's no longer the new girl who shocked people with how sharp her eye was. She's now the veteran, the one who's basically grown up on camera in front of millions of viewers. What's different now is the way she does business. Back when she and Jared were running Now and Then, they had an actual thrift store with real overhead like rent, employees, utilities, and all the headaches that come with owning a brick-and-mortar business. At the same time, they were filming Storage Wars, and trying to juggle both was nearly impossible. Something had to give, and eventually, the physical store shut its doors. She's been open about the fact that it just wasn't manageable anymore. Between filming, raising kids, and trying to have some sort of personal life, the shop became more of a burden than a dream. Instead, she's leaned into a looser, more flexible style of selling. These days, most of her reselling happens online. Think eBay, specialty sites, social media marketplaces, and the kind of digital hustle that a lot of resellers rely on now. She still sources from storage units, of course, that's her bread and butter, but she also picks up items from swap meets, garage sales, and other secondhand spots. Her garage is reportedly stacked with stuff she's sorting through, a real-life mini warehouse that keeps her busy between auctions. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and it means she gets to keep control of her schedule without the stress of paying rent on a storefront. The public part of her life, though, hasn't gotten much easier. Fame is a weird thing. It gives you recognition, but it also makes normal life 10 times harder. Brandi has admitted over the years that she's naturally shy, and the spotlight hasn't changed that. If anything, it's made her more anxious. She doesn't like being approached in public because she never knows who's coming up to her. It could be a friendly fan or someone with less than good intentions. Therapy has helped her work through some of that, but the anxiety is still there, always buzzing in the background. On top of that, she's still carrying grief. The loss of her father in 2020 hit her hard. She was incredibly close to him, and the years of watching him go through illness before he passed only deepened the weight she carries. And then there's her personal history with Jared. The breakup wasn't just a split, it was messy, painful, and made more complicated by the fact that they were still showing up in the same professional spaces. Even now, they sometimes cross paths at auctions, which makes for awkward TV and probably even more awkward real life. Imagine trying to do your job while standing next to your ex, who you share a whole history with, plus 2 kids. That tension doesn't just disappear because the cameras stop rolling. Speaking of her kids, they're older now and no longer the little ones that viewers used to see mentioned on the show. But even as young adults, their past medical issues haven't fully gone away. Both kids had to grow up faster than most, and Brandi has always been fiercely protective of them. In recent years, that protectiveness has gone into overdrive because of social media. Like a lot of moms in the public eye, she's faced the darker side of fame, which include creepy messages, harassment, people targeting her children online. It got so bad that she stopped posting photos of them entirely. Till date, she still keeps them mostly out of the spotlight, letting them live their lives away from the noise of public judgment. But the worry doesn't stop. She's talked about how much she stresses over the pressures her kids face. Everything from online harassment to just the normal stress of being young adults in a hyper-connected world. She's made it clear that her role as a mom is still the center of her life, even though her kids are technically grown. If anything, her protectiveness has only deepened. So what does Brandi's public image look like today? It's complicated. On one hand, she's still the tough, sharp, no-nonsense buyer that Storage Wars fans have always known. On the other, her real story is one of survival. Yes, surviving the harsh reality of fame, surviving the collapse of a long relationship, surviving medical issues, grief, and the non-stop pressures of raising kids under a spotlight. To her credit, though, she's still standing, still working, still showing up at auctions. That in itself says a lot. For now, Brandi isn't trying to be a celebrity in the traditional sense. She's not chasing endorsements, launching beauty lines, or living the influencer lifestyle. Instead, she's quietly doing what she's always done: hustling, reselling, and keeping her family together. Her fans see her on TV, but the truth is, the bigger story is happening off-camera, inside that garage full of inventory, inside therapy sessions, inside the day-to-day struggles that don't make it onto air. And maybe that's the point. Brandi Passante isn't the type to pretend everything's perfect. Her life has been messy, painful, and public, but yet she's still here, still finding a way to keep moving forward. For someone who's been through as much as she has, that in itself feels like a kind of victory. Brandi Passante's life warns us that fame is not equal to happiness. It warns that success does not end suffering. It warns that childhood trauma, medical illness, abuse leave marks that money or camera shine cannot erase. You may feel sad hearing what she has gone through, But you may also feel respect. She still fights every day. She still shows up for her kids. She still sells stuff. And she still walks out of the house even when fear grips her. That being said, what do you think about Brandi Passante's story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.